Government figures show the number of unaccompanied immigrant children in federal custody has been growing in recent months, and according to one report, have now grown five-fold over the last year, reaching their highest levels ever. Amna Nawaz has been following this story, and she's here with the latest. So, Amna, this New York Times report saying the number of these immigrant children has skyrocketed. We have done a lot of reporting on these separated children. Are these the same children? What are you finding?
Yeah, it's important to separate out here. Those separated children, they represent a very small slice of all the unaccompanied minors in U.S. government custody. Now, the vast majority of these kids, they're older, slightly older. They usually arrive alone, and they also usually arrive with an intent of reuniting with a family member inside the U.S. Now, that New York Times report you mentioned, they said a year ago, well, a little over a year ago, May 2017, there were 2,400 kids in custody, and they've seen a five-fold increase. Now, that increase is what is most striking, and I want to take a closer look at some of the numbers we've seen, because we were given firsthand look at some of the internal documents from the government. This is just over the last 3 months here, Judy. These are the total number of unaccompanied children in shelters. In July, 11,978. In August, 12,350. And in September, this is the number we got from the last 24 hours, 12,869 children in custody. The government would not give us comment on specific numbers, and they say the numbers change on a daily basis based on arrivals and how fast they can place kids out.
So what is behind this increase? Yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security puts out these numbers saying these are the highest family crossings on record for the month of August. Is this just a trend? Is that what's going on?
Partly. I mean, look, over the last 6 years, the numbers of unaccompanied children have been going up. There was a huge spike after 2012. Last year, though, in fiscal year 2017, they went down. And since then, people who look at the numbers say they've kind of stayed steady. And that's largely because the things that people are fleeing, the kids are fleeing in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, the violence and uncertainty, those really haven't changed. So there's two other things that offer some insight into what's really going on here. One is the discharge rate. The documents we saw show that has gone down, meaning they're moving kids out of the system much more slowly. At the same time, the average length of stay, that's gone up. There's some other numbers I want to take a look at here. So 2 years ago, the average child was staying in U.S. custody 40 days. Now they're staying an average of in 2017, it was 51 days. That has now gone up to 59 days in custody. So when we asked some former government officials about what's going on here, they point to Trump administration policies. There were two new policies that went into effect. One in which they said, look, anyone who's in the household that wants to get a child back in their custody, everyone has to submit data and fingerprinting. That can take a long time. They also said all this information is going to be going to ICE for enforcement purposes. So it had a chilling effect. People are less likely to come forward now.
So how is all this affecting the system? How is it affecting the children?
Look, overall, they say the system is stressed. The shelters were not designed to be actually handling this kind of capacity. The last number we saw showed they're at a 93% occupancy rate. So 93% of all the beds available to them, they are filled. One former official I talked to said in past years, when they reached around 90 or 91%, panic would set in, and they would require multiple agency resources to try to come together and get that number back down to 80 or 85. That was the sweet spot for them. But look, the bigger picture here is it's bad for the children. There's consensus now that prolonged detention can have trauma, can have deep impact on these kids. And one official actually said, look, the longer these kids sit in the shelters, the greater the chance that something can go wrong.
You had referred, Amna, to a previous administration's taking what you called a whole-of-government approach to this. How is this administration different?
This government seems to be forcing, or rather focusing much more on getting resources to detention rather than getting the kids out. We've seen that with them wanting to give money to Mexico to help deport people before they get to the U.S. We've seen them move millions of dollars from other agencies to ICE to support additional resources. It looks like their approach to children in detention is really no different. The difference right now, they're saying, and because in governments past, they've done this with emergencies. They've ramped up emergency beds. They've nearly doubled the number of shelter beds over the last year available for kids. In the past, they say, those were emergencies that came to them. This time they say it's an emergency of the administration's own making.
Well, again, it's such an important story following what's happening with these children and families in the United States. Amna Nawaz, thank you.
Thanks, Judy.